Російські війська далі крутяться навколо границь України та насторожують цілий світ. Підтримуючи солідарність з Україною, минулого тижня міністр оборони Канади Ананд проголосила продовження навчальної військової програми Unifier на 3 роки та збільшення персоналу програми до 400 осіб. Тим часом Конгрес українців Канади під проводом президента Олександра Хічі вважає, що Україні потрібно летальної зброї на зразок того, що Україні щойно вислала Велика Британія.
Дорогі глядачі, дуже приємно сьогодні мати на програмі міністра оборони Канади, пані Аніта Ананд, які щойно проголосили дуже важливі інформації про розвиток оборони України. Welcome to our show, Madam Anita Anand, Minister of National Defense. Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you very much for the general announcement about the expansion of the Unifier operation. Could you tell us what the government intends to do with Unifier within the context of this announcement?
Most definitely, Yuri, and thank you so much for having me on your show and allowing us to have this important conversation. Yesterday, we announced the extension and expansion of Operation Unifier. Operation Unifier has been in place in Ukraine since 2015, and under this operation, Canada has trained over 30,000 Ukrainian soldiers, including 2,000 members of the Ukrainian National Guard. With the extension and expansion of Unifier, the federal government is committing to approximately $340 million to ensure that we can increase the number of troops on the ground in Ukraine to up to 400 troops. In the next number of days, we will see 60 additional Canadian Armed Forces members leaving Canada. That is going to make the numbers close to having 250 or 60 members on the ground, given that 200 soldiers or so are already there. We have to remember that this operation will be in place now for another 3 years until March 2025. And as I speak with my allies and my counterparts and colleagues throughout the NATO alliance, it is universally acknowledged that Canada's contribution to Ukraine's sovereignty, security, and stability through Operation Unifier has been extremely important. So we are looking forward to continuing to support this training mission in Ukraine.
Well, we're very much looking forward towards these 3 years, but we also see here that you are creating an action team based out of Global Affairs Canada. That sounds pretty interesting. Could you explain what the aim and how is that supposed to work out?
Most definitely. I worked very hard on this initiative with Melanie Joly, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and out of Global Affairs Canada, we are creating an action team which will provide coordinating efforts to coordinate federal departments to continue to contribute to the peace and security in Ukraine. From security sector reform to conflict management to democratic reform to consular services and diplomacy, there is a need for coordination at the federal level, and we will continue to work with Global Affairs and this new action team that will be put in place under the announcement yesterday. And one other thing I should mention, Yuri, is that we are also using the communication security establishment to assist Ukraine with cyber surveillance, cyber operations, and the ensuring of secure networks, which of course is so important in the digital world.
Well, Minister, thank you. Thank you for that information. And we, as our Deputy Prime Minister, Ms. Freeland, always says, this is a fight between democracy and authoritarianism. And these Russian armies at the borders of Ukraine are not a casual occurrence. The invasion of Ukraine in 2014 wasn't casual. murders and poisoning around the world, bombings in Syria, and just recently the cyber activities against Ukraine. And you mentioned the protection here. We also have Russia's kind of aggressive incursion into the Arctic. To what extent is it possible to understand that helping Ukraine today actually helps Canada's interests in the long term, for example, in the Arctic, and maybe having real weapons of defense will help Ukraine in terms of Canada's long-term interests also?
Okay, well, thank you for that question. You know, it is very complex, obviously, but let me take it in parts. Firstly, after the Second World War, the creation of the international rules-based order and the Bretton Woods Agreement have been fundamental to the stability and security of democracy as an avenue and a political system that allows individuals in various countries to live in peace and security. And so Deputy Prime Minister Freeland is exactly right that Canada, in contributing to Ukraine's stability and sovereignty, is upholding the principles which we have stood for in this post-World War II area. And we will continue to do so because, as you said, Ukraine's stability and sovereignty is Europe's sovereignty, is the world's stability. And we will continue to ensure that we are doing our part with our allies and with our partners to uphold the international rules-based order. Now, of course, you mentioned Canada's Arctic, and there are other areas in the world where we are seeing Russian incursion and further incursion. And the world is, of course, interconnected, and we need to ensure that sovereign jurisdictions remain so, and that democracy can continue to flourish as a political system, not only in Ukraine, but throughout the world. In terms of your question, I believe you were asking about the provision of lethal aid at the end of your question.
And defensive weapons, yes.
In defensive weapons. So our package announced yesterday did include non-lethal aid, items such as military hospitals, communications equipment, surveillance assistance, and that type of assistance was part of the package announced yesterday. We are not leaving off the table any other option. In other words, we are continuing to examine this situation, which is fluid, which is concerning, and we will continue to engage with Ukraine in terms of its needs going forward. In that respect, I am traveling to Ukraine in the upcoming days, as well as Latvia, and I will be raising this and a number of other issues with my counterparts, and in particular with Minister Reznikov, with whom I've been in extremely close contact in the recent past, and who has expressed very strong support for the aid and the extension of Operation Unifier that I announced yesterday.
Minister Anand, we're all somehow boxed in to this the narrative that Putin is preparing, which is, I may or I may not invade Ukraine. What about thinking it this way, dear Putin? You already have invaded Ukraine. The narrative maybe shouldn't be don't do what you may or may not do. Maybe the narrative could be leave Ukraine alone. Maybe the narrative could be leave the invaded areas of Ukraine, leave the annexed Crimea, leave behind a few million or $1 trillion to rebuild what you have destroyed. Maybe that should be the narrative proposed to Mr. Putin.
Well, I am very sympathetic to the views that you're expressing. Of course, we know in 2014, There was the invasion of the Crimea, and that is a very important lesson for the West, and in particular the members of NATO, to take note as to what seems to be occurring here at the border with the buildup of Russian troops and aggression. And so I am very careful to use the language a further invasion into Ukraine, because that would, just like 2014, be unjustified and contrary to the principle that sovereign states have their own secure borders.
Okay, Minister, well, thank you very, very much for your time. Thank you very much for letting us know about your upcoming trip to Ukraine. We'll gladly be following that, and maybe we could have maybe a commentary from you while you're there. So we thank you on one hand for everything that you've presented today, and wish you good luck on your trip to Ukraine. Thank you very, very much, Minister.
Thank you, Yuri, and I'll look forward to being in touch with you while I'm away and once I get back with some more updates. Take care.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you very much for your time.